Hey, Purple Carroteers, Howard Jacobson here. I am the contributing author to a book called Proteinaholic. So I was asked by Purple Carrot to answer a bunch of questions about my diet, my lifestyle, and specifically around the issue of protein. So here goes. First question, what motivates you to follow a plant-based diet? So I'll give these to you in order. First one is health. I want to avoid the chronic diseases that just seem like a normal part of growing older in America. I'm talking about heart disease, where people are getting stents in their 50s and bypass surgery in their 60s. They're on statins in their 40s. And all of that is completely unnecessary. There are parts of the world where a cardiologist basically has to take up a different profession because there's not enough work to do. And so if we look and see what are those people eating, they're eating very, very high carb, unprocessed plant-based diets. So that's one thing. It's not just heart disease, of course, it's diabetes, it's cancer, it's the things that cost about 70 to 80% of our healthcare costs in America. So everybody right now is arguing, is worrying, oh, what about Obamacare? Is it going to be repealed? I'm telling you, it wouldn't make a difference if people were eating well, what our health insurance system was like, because there'd be so much excess availability for people to have treatment for the serious conditions that are not amenable to lifestyle, emergency medicine, rare genetic disorders, things like that, instead of us just guzzling up all the healthcare dollars with completely avoidable conditions and diseases. So that's one, my personal health. Second thing, I've become an endurance athlete. I've run a 50K in October. I'm training for a marathon or two in the spring. And a plant-based diet, a whole foods plant-based diet, aids in my recovery, which means I get to train harder, faster. I get to train more than other people. And I've come a long way from not being a runner at all in May to doing a pretty decent 50K in 5 hours, 8 minutes, 40 seconds, which is slightly under a 10-minute mile. And now aiming for Boston qualifying for a marathon in March. And people are like, well, how do you do it? And I'm not training any harder or any better than anybody else. I'm following the same training plans, but I'm eating so clean that I'm able to get more out of every run, out of every workout. Third thing, stewardship. So I have a couple of kids, and they're going to inherit this planet. And from a whole host of environmental reasons, eating meat is just an irresponsible thing to do at any kind of quantity other than what would be naturally attainable to us in paleo times. Like, I'm a big believer in paleo. And if you look at how paleo hunters hunt and how much meat they're able to eat, it's a tiny amount. It's maybe 2, 3, at most 5% of the diet. And so when we go above that, then we're basically contravening the laws of nature. And the only reason we're able to do it is because of the fossil fuel industry that has taken a million years of stored up energy in the ground and made it available to us now all at once. We're not living within our solar energy budget. And therefore, we are destroying the planet, essentially. We're causing deforestation, aquifer depletion, global climate destabilization, and the meat industry and the dairy and egg industry are huge parts of that. And finally, I was taught by my parents not to be rude, to have good manners. And when you look at the way animals are raised in agriculture, for either in factory farms or even in humane farms, there's no other word for it than rude. So if you're getting your dairy from a humane dairy, where the cows are treated nicely and massaged, well, guess what? That milk was supposed to go to a calf, but they took the calf away from its mother when it was 2 or 3 days old, 2 or 3 weeks old at most. And so you get all that milk, and you've just separated a mother and her baby. That's rude. To treat chickens the way we treat chickens, so we only use the hens, and the male chicks are just disposed of either in garbage bags or ground up. It's rude. It's not a polite way to be on this planet, and I don't want to participate in it. Next question. There is a big misconception that plant-based diets don't provide enough protein. Why do you think that stereotype exists? Okay, so as I mentioned, I co-wrote this book called Proteinaholic, and we look at this issue in depth. So basically, plants are seen as inferior to meat. And largely that's a legacy of the fact that plants are easier to come by than meat. Meat was hard to get. You had to work hard. It was a male sport, so it was accorded more honor and importance than just the female work of picking leaves and grasses and grains and digging up tubers. And meat rotted quickly, so it needed to be divided and eaten very, very quickly. And so it was prized. It was a thing that you didn't get very often, and so it was a valuable, prized possession. And it often made the difference in human history between starvation and not starvation, but marginally. So now we have a world in which meat is plentiful. There are no naturally imposed limits to its consumption, but we're still operating under this crazy scarcity mindset that, oh, we got to get our meat because it could save our lives. And yet we've got this meat available in unfathomable quantities 24/7. And we're still laboring under this misconception that the thing that was once rare and valuable, now that it's cheap and plentiful, is still going to be good for us in those same amounts. Now, another thing is where nutritional science has led us astray very, very badly. You know, like 100 years ago, the big deal was like, hey, let's discover vitamins and why when we take these vitamins, we eliminate deficiencies and we can get rid of rickets and beriberi and scurvy and pellagra and all the diseases that were seen as vitamin deficiencies. They were actually food deficiencies. People were starving. And it turns out that one of the limiting factors were these particular vitamins. But then nutritional science got all full of itself and said, hey, our job is to discover all the chemicals we need in order to be healthy, in order to thrive, in order to stay alive, and then we'll just pack those into pills and give them to people. So it was kind of a Soylent Green sort of, let's just figure out what's the minimum. Let's give people pills, and then we won't have to rely on food because God knows the food supply is shaky as it is. If we can just synthesize all this stuff in a laboratory, then we don't have to rely on, fickle, vulnerable Mother Nature. We can just take complete control. And it turns out in every study that's ever been done that when you extract nutrients from food and you just give people nutrients, that they come out worse. The people who were given beta carotene to prevent heart attack ended up with more heart attacks. They ended up dying sooner. They ended up with more lung cancer. And in every study like this, where you take a concentrated dose of a nutrient, which is supposedly good for us, and which is good for us in the context of food, turns out to be terrible in the context of a pill, in taking it out of its natural context. So the same thing happened with protein. So there's basically 3 macronutrients in food: carbohydrate, fat, and protein. And so science then decided, hey, let's figure out which is the most important. And carbohydrates and fats are fungible. They can get turned into one another. It's not always easy. It's easy to take fat from storage and release it into the bloodstream when we need it. That's how people lose weight. And it's possible to turn carbohydrates into fat. Doesn't happen very often. It happens very inefficiently, but it's possible. But protein is a different animal because of those nitrogen atoms. It's not turnable into the other two. And protein is, or should I say, amino acids, the building blocks of protein, are crucial for things like cell repair, growth, immune function, basically, DNA, everything that is important for life support is enhanced, is required to have these amino acids. So you can see how, and the only way we get what are called the essential amino acids are from foods. So you can see how this is kind of a limiting factor for human survival. If we don't get protein in our food, then we die. So let's think about it for even 30 seconds. If we needed crazy amounts of protein, more than we could get from plants, which, like, look outside, go to your window, take a look outside, and you'll see plants. And they are not going anywhere. They're not running away. They don't have fangs and claws. They're not going to attack us. We don't need a posse to communicate and bring them down with sharpened sticks and rocks tied to the end of them. We can get plants easily. It's the animals that are hard to get. Most hunting did not lead to success. So think about it. If protein was so important and we could only get it from animals in such an iffy activity as hunting, I wouldn't be making this video and you wouldn't be watching it. The human species would have died out a long time ago. Protein is so important that we only need, in order to survive, we had to adapt to only need tiny amounts of it, which are readily available in plant foods, and we needed to be able to get it as a sure thing. And plants are a sure thing and animals are not. Next question. Everyone knows that nuts and tofu are high in protein. Can you share 3 to 5 examples of plant-based proteins that people might not be aware of? So I'm going to turn this question on its head because the answer is every plant that you could possibly eat has either protein or amino acids that can be turned into proteins. So you name it, potatoes, rice. You could live on potatoes and get all the protein you need, probably double the protein you'd need. So let's think about it this way. When does a human being need the most protein? If amino acids are like building blocks or like bricks, when would a building need the most bricks? During routine maintenance over the course of its life? No, during the initial construction phase. So when do we need the most protein in our lives? It's when we are infants nursing at the breast, growing at a rate much faster than we would ever grow the rest of our lives. So the question then is, well, what is the protein composition of breast milk, human breast milk? And it's around 5 to 6%. So if that's the maximum we'll ever need, then any food that has 5 to 6% protein will be sufficient, and anything more than that is kind of excess. And that's what we find. So there's no plant food you could eat that doesn't have some amount of protein in it. If you're having, pure sugar or you drink glugging corn oil from a bottle, then no. But whole unrefined plant foods will have protein. You're hard pressed to find ones that don't. So rice, pasta, white pasta, wheat pasta, the stuff you think of as being calorically empty, all has enough protein. And to say nothing for, the salad vegetables, the greens, the orange, the yellows, the squashes, the carrots, all that is full of all the protein you could possibly need. Now, let's take one specific example that is low in protein, and that is most fruits. There are people who are fruitarians, who eat nothing but raw fruit, and some of them are the top endurance athletes in the world. And how is it possible? It doesn't seem mathematically possible. An apple is like 2 to 3% protein. Bananas, cherries, all very, very low in protein, but they have what's called labile amino acids. They have amino acids that aren't proteins, but remember are the building blocks for proteins. And so we need in our body a labile amino acid reserve. So our bodies are smart. We can just grab those amino acids and turn them into whatever protein we need. So there's really zero way to be protein deficient on a plant-based diet. If you find this interesting, visit my website, plantyourself.com, for a lot more. I've got 184 and counting podcast episodes, interviews with movers and shakers in the worlds of health and wellness. And you can sign up for my email newsletter, in which I send out tidbits, articles, bits of advice. And also check out the Big Change Program. If you are bought in to the idea of a plant-based lifestyle, but you are struggling to achieve it, you're struggling to maintain it, you find yourself binging, you find yourself going off the program and not exercising, and you'd like to lose some weight or get off meds or get healthy or just transform your life, check out bigchangeprogram.com. We're starting up in January 2017 with another run of the program. It has changed people's lives. So I invite you to throw your hat in the ring and change yours as well in community with us. All right, take care.